Well, the Red Sox have some new members, and they're kind of bizarre choices, at least on the surface. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. I apologize for the away game kind of out of nowhere. Usually, I let you guys know when there are going to be away games on this channel, but we'll be back in the studio tomorrow, don't worry. Either way, September marks two really important things for the Boston Red Sox. Obviously, first is their final push towards a postseason, right? The first time they could potentially be in a postseason in 4 years. That's probably a pretty big thing. The second thing is that the rosters expand by 2. Every team in Major League Baseball on September 1st are allowed to call up, most of the time, one pitcher and one hitter to help improve their ball club. And for the Red Sox, there were some really interesting choices to go with, and who they actually went with, well, that one is extremely interesting because I don't think anyone really saw these two picks coming. The first name they called up was Ali Sanchez, and that should be a relatively familiar name to you if you've been paying attention to this channel for a little bit. He was recently on the Boston Red Sox actually a few weeks ago, ended up only really getting 1 or 2 at-bats with the club before he was DFA'd and picked up by the New York Mets. Well, the Red Sox wanted this guy back hard enough that they actually traded for him to get him back onto this roster. It wasn't anything crazy. There weren't players exchanged. It was just simply Ali Sanchez to the Red Sox for cash considerations. But regardless, the Red Sox really wanted Ali Sanchez back. And that's extremely interesting, right? Because again, if you've been paying attention to the channel, Ali Sanchez is not exactly the most exciting catcher in the entire world here. For those of you who didn't even know, he is a catcher, and offensively, it's not exactly fantastic. It is a 185 hitter in 47 games at the big league level with a 458 OPS. Like I said, not a very good big league hitter, right? There hasn't been much offered at the plate from Ali Sanchez at the big league level. He's actually been a pretty solid hitter at the minor league level. So maybe the Red Sox see something in him like they saw Narvaez offensively, where they're like, hey man, maybe we could bring this out of you down the stretch run here. Really, the big highlight with Ali Sanchez is, if there is a highlight at all, is his defense, right? And it's because it's pretty solid. He's a pretty solid blocker. He's a pretty solid framer. He's a pretty solid guy when it comes to catching players stealing, right? He's just sort of a decent defensive backup catcher. I think that's ultimately where the Red Sox landed on this guy. But the reason I actually waited a little bit to make this video as opposed to just sort of making a breaking instant reaction video to this news was because I wanted to see if they were going to give reasoning as to why the Red Sox went with these two players, and they actually did for Ali Sanchez. So here's what Alex Cora had to say about him. Quote, "We saw an opportunity to bring a good catcher back, a guy we really like, and obviously we don't know what the future holds. Carlos Narvaez was banged up a few weeks ago. He's been able to post. We feel confident and hopeful that we could stay healthy, but at the same time, if something happens, he can help us win games." Honestly, it just kind of sounds like the Red Sox saw an opportunity to bolster a position that really wasn't all that bolstered to begin with, and just simply get Carlos Narvaez some time off his feet again, right? I think they're trying to avoid the whole, injury that keeps him out for a couple of days/weeks thing at the end of this season here. And Ali Sanchez just happened to be a guy that they really like for whatever reason, right? I couldn't tell you what reason that is, but it's clear and obvious the Red Sox really like this dude as a third string catcher, like a third string quarterback on the bench for the Red Sox here. The other guy the Red Sox ended up going with, like I said, usually one pitcher, one hitter. They ended up going with Zack Kelly. Now, as much as you guys know that I am a really big Zack Kelly fan, I may be the only person outside of his immediate family in the entirety of the Northeast to have a Zack Kelly Red Sox jersey, but even I can admit, I could see why people would sit there and see the name Zack Kelly get called up and be like, oh, well, wait a second, why are we doing this at this point in the season, right? In 22 2/3 innings, he has a 5.56 ERA with a much lower 3.65 FIP, so a little bit of life in there, right? FIP is a little bit funky when it comes to relievers, especially relievers with small sample size, right? It's not the most trustworthy statistic in the world because there's so many variables that can go into really short amounts amount of innings and really short bursts of appearances at the big league level. So take that with a grain of salt that his FIP is so much lower than his ERA. His WHIP kind of makes sense compared to his ERA. It's a 1.456. So there was a ton of traffic overall on the base pass when he was pitching, which I don't think I need to tell you guys or prove to you guys statistically, right? I feel like if you watch most of the games that Zack Kelly was in this year, you would understand that there's a lot of traffic on the base pass for this dude. But what's weird about Zack Kelly is still, despite the fact that his overall sort of back of the baseball card numbers aren't exactly fantastic, his sort of underlying metrics are actually pretty good, right? If you go to his Baseball Savant page and take a look at his percentiles, this doesn't look like the percentile of a guy with an almost 6 ERA, does it? I mean, every single category here is above average, right? You're better than the average duck at almost every single one of these sort of measurable, quantitative underlying metrics that you could have as a baseball player. So that's a really, really weird aspect of Zack Kelly, right? It kind of lends some legs to the fact that, hey, maybe he was pitching more towards what his FIP was leading on to as opposed to what his ERA was leading on to. And maybe there is something here to unlock with Zack Kelly, right? I've always felt like Zack Kelly could be a really good bullpen arm for the Red Sox. It just really feels like he gets to like 85, 90% of the way there and then just simply can't get the rest away, whether it's because of injury, whether it's because of a lack of control, whether it's just simply because he gives up like a 3-run home run and all of a sudden he finds himself back down in AAA, right? It just feels like that's always been sort of the story with Zack Kelly. So he'll have a few good outings and then just simply not be able to put it together. But obviously, you take a look here and you say, well, okay, that's great, Corbin. There's some underlying metrics here, but, you know, we were looking for people who are going to impact the Red Sox right away. And Sanchez and Zack Kelly don't exactly exude that for Red Sox fans. But I don't think it's as bizarre a choice as you may think if we really break it down, and we really have to look at it from a different angle here. But before we look at that angle, a quick word from today's sponsor. Honestly, now that I'm a few more years out of college than I'd like to really admit, after a night of drinks, I simply just don't bounce back the next day like I used to. That is, until I found Pre-Alcohol. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking, and I get it. Honestly, I get it. I was a little bit skeptical about this thing at first, but I decided why not? I'll give it a shot, right? I took it my last time out at Fenway Park, and obviously the ensuing evening that came after that. And honestly, the next morning I felt really great. In fact, great enough to record this video just after that next day. So how does this whole thing work? Well, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for rough mornings after drinking. Pre-alcohol, it produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Listen, baseball, playoffs, football, they're all right around the corner. This is the perfect time of year to either go to a big game, put the game on your couch, and either way, you're probably raising a glass, right? Just remember, when you do, make Pre-Alcohol your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/RSR to learn more and get 15% off of your order when you use code RSR at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. Again, remember to head over to zbiotics.com/RSR and use code RSR for 15% at checkout. Thank you very much to ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the video. Honestly, this is kind of an easy explanation as to why the Red Sox went with both of these guys, and the answer is they're both kind of temporary. Let's go back to the Zack Kelly conversation where you sit there and you say, well, the Red Sox, they probably needed a starting pitcher, right? Or they probably needed a more impactful bullpen arm or maybe a bulk bullpen arm down the stretch. Zack Kelly is neither. But at the same time, too, they don't need a starting pitcher right this second, right? On Wednesday or potentially Thursday, depending on how the Red Sox want to line this up, Peyton Tolley was supposed to make his second major league start. Now, the problem with that, he's been on a schedule this entire season of 5 days off, 1 day on, right? Where he's pitching essentially every 6th day. Now, the Red Sox, they're being really careful with this guy. He's on a pitch limit. He's on an innings limit, right? They're also being careful with the way he's recovering. He's not used to the major league schedule, which is 1 day pitching, 4 days off. And that's essentially what it would be if he was in line to start tomorrow, Wednesday, as opposed to Thursday. Now, the way the Red Sox avoid this is they use one of these roster spots to bring up a spot starter like a Chris Murphy or Kyle Harrison, who we've talked about 100,000 times on this channel, right? A guy who, could potentially be a legitimate impact starter for this team. He's been sitting down there. He's actually been scratched from his last couple of starts. And if you're the Red Sox, why would it make sense for you to wait until Kyle Harrison can come up to make a move that bolsters your roster, right? Zack Kelly may not be the most exciting name in the world, but he is a name, right? If you had called Kyle Harrison up immediately or Chris Murphy up immediately, then you're just sort of wasting a bench spot while your bullpen stays exactly the same. By calling up Zack Kelly, you were able to stick someone in the bullpen temporarily, so at the bare minimum, you always have that extra arm on your team, right? And then you can sort of move it over to a Kyle Harrison or a Chris Murphy or Uberstein or whatever when that time comes. No one's really going to be incredibly upset that you're optioning Zack Kelly in 1, 2, 3 days, whatever it may be. Now, Ali Sanchez is kind of a similar conversation, right? Except it's a little bit different here. Ali Sanchez will probably be on the Red Sox a little bit longer. Now, there are two possibilities here because eventually someone will be taking his place. The first possibility is that it's Wilyer Abreu. Now, Wilyer was supposed to come back yesterday. If you're watching this video on Tuesday, he was going to be the Red Sox September call-up. The problem is he just hasn't been rehabbing the way the Red Sox were hoping he would, right? They were both concerned and not concerned with him with their last update. So it feels like he's still going to be a little bit of a ways away. For the Red Sox, they sit there and they say, once again, okay, well, we could either hold this spot for Wilyer Abreu and have nobody in there, or we could give it to somebody who bolsters an area of this team where, hey, we haven't publicly said anything, but Narvaez is really struggling with the workload, or Connor Wong's been going through something, and we need to make sure that these two guys are good to go for the finale, like legitimate playoff push here, as opposed to just simply trying to get through these games at the beginning of September. Whenever Wilyer Abreu comes back, well, that's when Ali Sanchez makes his exit because, hey, that's a guy that we're not going to miss, right? The second option here is that they're waiting for Nick Sogard to be eligible to come up again, right? They know that Wilyer Abreu is going to be a pretty long period of time before he can come back. Nick Sogard was optioned to get Nathaniel Lowe back from paternity leave, which means he has 10 days after that option before he can come back up to Major League Baseball. So this could be a guy where I think he's at day 6, 7, somewhere in there, right? At the end of those 6 or 7 days here, they could call that guy back up. And again, Ali Sanchez isn't a guy the Red Sox are going to miss. It's just simply someone to be in there that you can utilize in an interesting way and help this team at some point this season. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say here in this long-winded, obvious, sort of rambling Corbin way that I've had for the last 3 years on this channel is that these guys are essentially placeholders for the actual moves the Red Sox want to make with these September call-ups. And to me, that actually makes a whole lot of sense. You look at it and you say, there were some real impactful moves the Red Sox could have made from AAA that would have bolstered this roster by any means. I don't know what's going on with Vaughn Grissom. Genuinely have no idea. Christian Campbell too as well. But ultimately, the Red Sox have a plan, right? They have an idea of who they actually want on this roster, whether it's Kyle Harrison or Chris Murphy and or Wilyer Abreu and Nick Sogard. All of these guys have something going on here where it doesn't make sense to pull them up immediately. Whether it's, hey, we simply could use another arm in the bullpen for the next couple of days, so as opposed to pulling up a starter, we're going to pull up the bullpen arm until the starter's ready to go, or whether it's injury or, funkiness with DFAs and options and stuff like that. There's something holding the Red Sox back from being able to call up the guys that they want. So what they did is they called up somebody that they could use, right? And that's simply at the end of the day what ended up happening here with Zack Kelly and Ali Sanchez. And I think it's important to remember that this isn't the final product, right? This is the sort of middleman to get to what the Red Sox want to bolster this roster going down the stretch here. And I think it's going to change a couple of times, right? It may be Kyle Harrison for a week and a half and then maybe Chris Murphy to finish it off because he's got more experience. Or maybe it's Wilyer Abreu and then they option Nate Eaton to get up Nick Sogard or stuff like that, right? This isn't the end all be all. Right, and I think a lot of people are going to hammer the Red Sox because of that thought, that these are just the guys that are going to be here the rest of the year, but that's not exactly what's happening, right? I think the Red Sox rosters, like it has been over this last week and a half here, is going to change a lot between now and the end of the season as the Red Sox continue to just sort of be aggressive in trying to bolster these specific parts of this roster. So it's going to be interesting to see. I know it looked really, really weird and kind of off-putting, if we're being honest, to see Ali Sanchez and Zack Kelly being the guys that are being called up here to help with the stretch run. But again, I don't think they're the end game, just simply someone to hold their place. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think? What do you think of the call-ups? What do you think of my idea slash theory slash hypothesis as to why these guys were called up? And let me know ultimately who you think the Red Sox end up calling up after all is said and done. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you again back in the studio in a second, but always in the red seats.